I'm Manish Gupta, and this is video number 201. In this video, I'm going to talk about MultiTabQA, which is about generating tabular answers for multi-table question answering. Right? I'm sure most of you have heard about text-based question answering, and then there is also vision-based question answering, which is visual question answering. And then there is table QA. Table QA basically means given a table and a text question, come up with a text answer. Now, going beyond that, there is multi-tab QA. Now, what is multi-tab QA? Right? Multi-tab QA, as the name suggests, it basically means answering questions over multiple tables. It tries to also output answers in tabular format with column headers. So the idea is you have lots of tables in your database. There is a text question as input, and then what you want as part of output is basically answers in tabular format with column headers, right? This is depicted in this example on the right side. So the question, the text-based question is, what is the zip code of trips made which are above 200 with humidity below 70? Yeah. Now the weather information is in one table, the trip information is another table, and the zip code, yes, that column sort of matches. And the question actually asks to do some sort of a join such that you see the number of trips are above 200. So basically there should be at least 200 trips in the zip code, and the humidity should be below 70. Right? So essentially, this requires sort of a join or an intersection over two tables in this particular case, so as to get the final answer. The final answer is also a table, as you see. It's a one-column table with the right column header, and then there are rows in it. Okay. So at the bottom, you basically see the way the input is provided to a multi-tab QA sequence-to-sequence learning model. They model it using using sequence-to-sequence learning based on transform-based networks. So what you see is that the input is actually mentioned at the bottom. The input contains query or the question tokens. Then there is a special token called table name, after which there are these tokens which basically comprise the name of the table. Then you have so essentially, of course, after the question, there is first table and there is information about second table and information about more tables, of course, right? But then within information for each table, you have the table name, and then you have the table header. So this header basically starts with a special token call and then the special token colon, and then there are these headers basically separated by the pipe token. And then you have each row for the table. So row 1 to row k. And for each of those rows, you have the values which are encoded in as part of the input. Again, for the another table, you do the same format. Start with table name, have basically table to header and table rows and so on. Okay. Now the output of multi-tab QA is basically an answer table, which comprises of the answer table header, which basically, for example, in this case is zip code, but then of course you have special tokens colon to begin with. Then there will be rows. So there are two rows here. So therefore you have row 1, row 2 in the output, which is basically indicated by row 1, row 2, row 3 placeholders or other standard tokens, special tokens, and then the values themselves. So that's the format of the input output. Yeah. So this multi-tab QA, the base model is actually pre-trained on 1.8 million TAPEX samples. So 1.8 million samples, yeah. And it is basically the base model is the TAPEX model itself. We'll talk about the TAPEX model. That's that. The TAPEX original model was pre-trained for single table question answering, but they have modified that one to do multi-table question answering, as I'll talk in detail in this video. Okay. The model has been pre-trained on Spider. There are popular single table question answering datasets like Spider. So they take the TAPEX model and they basically pre-train on Spider and synthetic data set. So two different data sets. Again, we'll talk about the pre-training thing more on the next slide. But in short, they pre-train on Spider and synthetic data set with 136K SQL queries. 136K samples, which each sample comprising of SQL queries, input tables, and tabular answers. Okay, so that's that. And then finally, so these are the two steps. These are basically pre-training steps. And then, finally, they also do fine tuning on 3 different data sets and show results: Spider, Atis, and GeoQuery. And then, of course, while showing results, they have to basically decide what kind of matrix to use. And I'll also introduce those metrics. They use some table-specific metrics to compare and evaluate how good their model is doing. Okay. So let's get into these details. I just specified these things in short, but let's get into the details now. So how is this multi-tab QA trained, right? So as I was telling on the previous slide, it's trained in multiple stages. So primarily 2 stages, pre-training and fine-tuning. And within pre-training itself, there are 3 stages. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So you can overall say 4 stages, 3 stages of pre-training, the 4th stage of fine-tuning. It's trained in a curriculum learning approach way, which basically says that you start training in the initial few steps in the epoch. You train with simple samples, easier samples. And as the epoch progresses, the complexity of learning or the complexity of these samples increases. Okay, so that's the basic fundamental behind curriculum learning approach, which is used for training multi-tab QA models. So as I said, there are 2 stages, pre-training and fine-tuning, and pre-training has like 3 parts to it: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and we'll talk about those one by one. Okay. So what is stage 1? So in stage 1, basically, they essentially start with the TAPEX pre-training corpus, right? And they essentially use that so as to train the first model. And this corpus is basically a single table question answering corpus. So they say that, hey, before you can actually train a multi-tab question answering model, multi-table question answering model, you would start by just making it really robust for single table question answering. Okay. So therefore, stage 1 is just about single table question answering, where the model learns to generate tabular answers from relatively simple SQL queries. So again, there are no natural language queries here. They're just simple SQL queries. You basically take the TIPEX pre-training corpus, which basically has SQL queries and answers for them, right? And you modify those samples as to suit the input-output format, which is mentioned here, and you use that so as to pre-train your model. So it's like 1.8 million samples that you pre-train stage 1. Okay, so it's for single table question answering. You have the SQL queries, and you want to output the table with headers. Okay. Stage 2 basically is multi-table question answering. And for stage 2, you basically depend on the Spider SQL dataset. So Spider SQL dataset has interesting samples for multi-table question answering. But these samples also do not have any natural language questions. Okay, it still has SQL queries only. And then those SQL queries can be run against the database. And you can actually get the result tables out of it. Okay. So stage 2 is basically using Spider data set, which basically comprises of SQL queries, and then making the model learn how you can actually take those table descriptions and the values, and then take the SQL queries, and then generate the final output, the result table itself. Stage 3 is also multi-table question answering, and it is actually same as stage 2, but with 133K, so much larger, right? 133,000 synthetic samples. So compared to stage 2, which basically just has about 4,000 or so samples, stage 3 has 133,000 synthetic samples, pretty large in that sense. Okay. So these synthetic samples have been created by actually manually crafting some templates, 45 manual templates with placeholders for aggregation operators, relational operators, table names, and headers. I mean, of course, templates for SQL queries, right? So that's that. So you have a synthetic database, synthetic queries, and queries of different complexity, 45 different templates, from simple templates to more complex templates, including some single table question answering templates as well, right? And that gives you your stage 3 dataset, synthetic dataset, on which you further pre-train. Remember, this is all pre-training because nowhere have you used natural language input. The questions are always SQL queries to begin with, and you want to get a tabular output. In stage 1, the tabular output, stage 1 is basically about just single table. Stage 2 and 3 are about multi-table. Okay. So in the fine-tuning stage, basically you bring in natural language questions. So basically, there are natural language questions associated with the Spider, Atis, and GeoQuery datasets, 3 datasets. So you fine-tune in 3 different ways. 3 different checkpoints. Okay. The dataset comprises of natural questions as input and the input and output tables. So input tables with natural questions go as input, and then at the output, you expect a particular table as the answer. Okay. So just a little bit about these 3 datasets. So Spider dataset is actually very large, 200 databases or 138 domains. GeoQuery is a database of US geography, and Atis basically is query, it consists of queries on a database of flight bookings. Okay, so how does multi-tab QA perform? Okay, so essentially they train it so well. How does it perform, right? So to be able to understand the performance, first they define metrics. They define various metrics, the first one being table exact match. So table exact match basically means that, given natural language question, the user expected some sort of an answer as a table. The predicted table and the actual table, they should exactly match in terms of ordering of rows, column and table headers, and the table values themselves. Only then you get a point on the table exact match metric. It's a binary metric. Either the output matches exactly or it doesn't match. Very, very strict metric. And therefore, they want to relax it down to a row exact match, column exact match, or cell exact match matrix, right? So what does row exact match mean? It basically means that I don't care about the ordering of the rows in the generated table, but I care about the row being exact. So in the sense, the ordering within the row, I do care. So within the row, it checks for ordering of values. And of course, if the values are correct or not. Okay. So the row exact match is basically computed in terms of both precision and recall, which basically captures the percentage of correctly generated rows with respect to the actual rows or the predicted rows, right? So that's that. Now, just like row exact match, you have column exact match and cell exact match. Cell exact match basically means if the actual answer consists of, let's say, 10 cells and you generated 5 of them correctly, you basically get, and you generated like 8 cells. So you get like a precision of 5 on 8 while recall of 5 on 10. Okay. So that's that. Now, here's the interesting example. So let's say if your question was how many likes does Kyle have? And there are two different tables, high schooler and likes. So you would go ahead, find Kyle, 1934, you go to that one, and you basically try to find how many likes does he have. And it turns out that there is only one like, so the target answer was count star with one, and predicted also as a header of count star and answer as one. So this is an example of a good answer, an exact match, table exact match of one. Okay. So the base model, as I mentioned, is TIPEX base. So they basically use the TIPEX base model, which has been pre-trained on TIPEX data itself, right? It's a 140 million parameter model, which is sort of pre-trained with 1.8 million samples, right? So that's that. Now, here are the results on the three datasets, Spider, GeoQuery, and Atis, and their results comparing TIPEX base and MultiTabQA. In both of these, of course, TIPEX base is also fine-tuned on Spider data or on GeoQuery data or Atis data, while MultiTabQA is fine-tuned in 4 different stages, right? So as you observe across all metrics, essentially across all the three data sets, the multi-tab QA is way better compared to the TIPEX base model, right? Except in a few cases where TIPEX base is better, but then in most cases, as you observe, multi-tab QA performs better. Okay. So in summary, in this video, I talked about multi-tab QA, which is about multi-table question answering. The authors release a pre-training data set of 133K samples to effectively train a sequence-to-sequence learning model. The model is based on existing table question answering model, a single table question answering model called TIPEX base. And the training is actually done in 4 stages, where there are 3 stages of pre-training and the 4th stage of fine-tuning. And they fine-tune and evaluate this model on natural language questions across 3 datasets, Spider, GeoQuery, and Atis. Okay, so that's it for this video. Hope you liked the video. Thank you for watching. Connect with me on my LinkedIn or look at my research on my homepage. Thank you.